Hi there, I'm Alvin from Dr. Wealth. The recent news is all about China, 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 and one of it is that the stock market has reacted very adversely to what has happened over the weekend, which was the conclusion of the 20th National Congress, which is taking place in China. That is where the meeting consider who are the key leaders that will lead China in the next 5 years before the next so-called election comes. So that could all be hoo-ha, and I want to give you a status update of what's going on, and if you're holding China stocks, what should you be doing? All right. So let's begin with how assessing how bad the damage was when the market opened on 24th October, and you can see it in the chart here. Let me just blow it up for you. This is the Hang Seng Index Tracker ETF, and you can see the very sharp drawdown since 2021. Hong Kong has been like the worst markets in the world, especially this year. I think they are the worst among the developed countries, right? And it's even heading to the 2008 low. Okay, so now Hang Seng is at a 13-year low at the moment, and the low can of course go lower, and it's broken a lot of those trend lines that we have spoken about in the last video that I've done. And even on that day itself, the Hang Seng dropped 6%, and you have heavyweights like Alibaba down 12%, Tencent down 11%, and they have already been down a lot over the last 1 or 2 years, and yet they can still go lower. So as the saying goes, what low can go lower, and that has caught many investors in China equities doubtful, right? What to do with it. And they thought that the rebound is very near the bottom, the reward is better than the risk right now, and yet even if you buy now, you can still see the share price go even lower. So that really gave investors zero confidence, or very very low confidence in China equities at this moment. And let's unpack what was going on. Okay, so this essentially, the Congress started like 2 weeks ago, last weekend. President Xi giving a speech, and that already signaled that he is going to be like the third, going for his third term. Right, continue to be the president of China, which is itself is unprecedented, and market should have priced in already, because that is the common belief that Xi is going to run for the third term, and that news had been around for months, if not for years. So it is not something that is new. And after the speech, the one whole week of trading, right, beginning from 17th to 21st October, the MSCI China was just down about 3%. So this MSCI China includes not just the Hong Kong stocks, but the A shares in China, as well as the US ADR listed in the US exchanges. Okay, so it's a more comprehensive index that we are looking at. So it's down 3%, nothing significant, I would say. But then the big move came the day after the standing committee has been finalized, which was on 23rd October. And the next day, which was a Monday on 24th October, we saw that big drawdown, right? Hang Seng down 6%, and then the MSCI China was down 10% in a day. Compared to the market was quite normal, right, for the last 1 week of trading until that very fateful day. So what is going on? Why this standing committee has caused such a heavy sell down in just a day? And of course, I'm going to give you my take. This is the previous standing committee. Oh, but before we talk about this standing committee, why is it so important? Why is this group of people so important? It's because they are the decision-making body for the entire China, right? For the entire Chinese Communist Party. They hold the most power within the party itself, right? There are many different layers. Okay, so the next layer will be the Politburo, right, committee. So this is a Politburo standing committee. There are 7 of them, including a president. This is a previous standing committee, and you can see that most importantly is the label at the bottom of each of the photograph, right? The colored label, right? So you can see the C faction is in red, and then you see the Who faction is in green, and then you have see the No faction is gray. And the previous standing committee, the last 5 years, it was quite a balance in terms of the factions that involve in the decision-making body. And to some of you might not know, China is not, although it looks like a single party, right? The Chinese Communist Party, okay? But within the party itself, there are actually factions, okay? There are gangs, there are cliques. And there's this C faction, and then there's the Who faction, right? Who faction is actually the Chinese Communist Youth League, or CCYL, which I may use this term interchangeably later, okay? So this CCYL is the same as this Who faction, and they were led by Hu Jintao, which was the previous president, former president before Xi Jinping. So this political rivalry has always been around since Mao Zedong time. This is nothing new. Okay, so there is a multi-faction kind of relationship or political rivalry that exists within the Chinese Communist Party. So in the previous standing committee, you can see that it's quite balanced, right? You have 3 from C faction, you got 2 from Hu faction, you got 2 that is pretty neutral. Okay, and what has changed? This is what has changed. The newest standing committee in the next 5 years, and you look at the label, you will see that all of them except Huang Huning, which has no faction, the rest all belong to the C faction. So it is almost as though that C has successfully purged CCYL or the Hu faction away from the decision-making body. And that means that no one is going to challenge Xi Jinping's policy or the direction that he's moving, right? We don't know whether that's supposed to be good or bad. In China, it has always been very central figure, strongman politics, the kind of authoritarian kind of setup. It's since the dynasty times, right? China has always been like that. Okay, they have never been a democracy. So, and they have progressed, right, under even a very key central figure in the past 50, 60 years, right? So we still don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. Or in the past 10 years, Xi Jinping has been struggling to purge opponents and trying to move his policy. Maybe now he can move his policy faster. Who knows? Okay, so it remains to be seen whether this is good or bad. And of course, from the West perspective, this is always bad because the West believes in a more democratic kind of government setup where citizens have a power to vote in and vote out politicians, right? So that is their value system, and that is what they believe. And of course, when they see that there's suddenly this strong man coming up and having a very consolidated his power within the party, this is something that the West will frown upon. Okay, so I would say that we still don't know, right, whether this is going to end up better or worse. Okay, so it waits to be seen. There was a televised scene where the former president Hu Jintao was escorted out of the meeting before it ended. And that caused a stir in the internet, in the media space. Everybody was coming in with their own opinion, thinking that what does this mean, right? Is it a sign? Is it deliberate? Did they wanted to show that Xi Jinping have consolidated his power? That Hu Jintao, which is the symbol of the CCYL, has been removed. Okay, so there was one take, and then another take is like they were saying that it is not deliberate, but probably there was a name list, then that certain CCYL members were not inside, okay, or maybe trying to challenge the authority, and then he was asked to leave, right? So there could be many variation of the stories that's going on. But the problem with China is that they don't really give a lot of commentary, right? And they also do censorship, okay? So they will just prefer to keep it mum. And that is very typical of very Chinese culture, right? High context culture where they leave a lot of room for interpretation. Okay, they say that for this instance, they said that because the Hu Jintao is not in good health and he couldn't sit for very long, and that's why he was escorted out. Okay, so it was health reason. That was the official given reason by China, and of course the West doesn't buy that, and some people just don't buy it, and they come up with their own versions of the story. Okay, so that is what high context culture is. They leave a lot of room for that interpretation, and the West pounds on that opportunity. So we still don't know, right, exactly what has happened. Okay, but we can take it as maybe it is really a sign, right, that the CCYL power has been crippled, right? As you can see, more from the standing committee members, majority of them are the C faction already, and there's no one CCYL member that is in the standing committee for the next 5 years. All right, and that means that nobody's going to challenge President Xi Jinping's policy, right? And during his speech, he does emphasize some continuity in that policy, okay, like common prosperity, zero COVID policy to stay, and also to reunify Taiwan as a very key priority, okay? So these are policies that investors don't generally like, right? Let's go through some of this in more detail, okay? So let's start with common prosperity. And contrary to what most people think, what common prosperity means is like Robin Hood policy, robbing the rich and giving it to the poor. But based on what Xi Jinping has been saying, it is not exactly that. He did use the term called irregular capital expansion, right? So he is basically saying that people should not merely use capital to get richer. Okay, for example, like speculating in housing. We all know that the Chinese are mad about buying houses, prices have been going up, and they think that that's the best investment, and just put in capital, and then you can grow more capital, right? Without doing much work, okay? And likewise for maybe a tech space where there were a lot of venture capitalists who became rich by investing in startups, and when they became successful and they made a hell of money, right? So they were just risking their capital rather than doing productive work, okay, in that sense, okay? So that common prosperity, it means that it's not about deploying capital, but to put in productive work that could be of help or benefit to the overall economy. There is some progress, there's some development in maturing the economy. So that is where Xi Jinping wants to shift the attention to, right? So basically, they also wanted to catch up with the West. And we know that all the semiconductor bans is hurting China, and China wants to be self-reliant. And that means that they need to improve their technology, and that requires more resources to be dedicated in that space. Not use those resources to make games, not use those resources to speculate in properties, right? So you start to see that clamp down. So he has been quite consistent with what he says and what he have been doing, right? So this is what common prosperity is, and of course, as investor, your primary job is to deploy capital to make money, okay? And that is against the odds with this common prosperity theme, all right? So which means that he might care less about how the stock market trades, right? Because that is where the capitalists are deploying the capital, and the capitals are not really put into good use per se, right? So definitely from that China perspective, they want to channel resources to say semiconductor, chip design, to clean energy transition. So those are some of the long-term goals that they have always been voicing about. So that is the first policy that is of concern to investor. And second is definitely zero COVID. As the world has been opening up, China remained pretty much closed, and to the extent that some cities, big cities like Shanghai, are locked down, and that creates a lot of toll on the economy itself. So China initially aimed for a 5.5% GDP growth, and that has been so-called unlikely to be achieved many months ago, especially when second quarter they only grew like 0.4%. And the latest quarter they did beat the expectation. They grew 3.9%, but it's still short of that 5.5% growth that they were looking at. They need to do better than 5.5% to cover the slower pace in the last two quarters, which was 0.4 and 4.8%, respectively for second and first quarter, right? And not just the GDP growth, the retail sales have also declined, and the youth employment remains high based on the latest quarter results. Okay, so you can see that this lockdown has implications, right? Consequences to the overall economic growth, and that is what investors don't like, right? Because investors want to see the recovery, investors want to buy into that growth again. If China is not growing, why would investors want to buy China? Right? That is the growth story that it has attracted investors in the first place. And so investors are just really waiting for this zero COVID policy to be at least be less stringent, right? Remove the lockdowns, and try to get back to normal as much as possible, such that the economy can recover, the companies can start to make better earnings and report better results. Okay. And the third one would be to reunify Taiwan. Okay, so that has always been a hot topic and a hot button as well. And US is also involved, right? US say that they will defend Taiwan if there's an invasion. And that becomes very tricky, because if, let's say, China really get into a conflict with Taiwan, that is something that is probably culminating into a World War III kind of potential, right? Where allies will start to take sides, and then things blow out of proportion. So that is a risk, not just for investors who invest in China, but investors in general, because if a World War III kind of scenario plays out, it's neither good for China, it's neither good for US, it's neither good for markets around the world. All right, so that is something to watch out for. Okay, because during the latest speech, President Xi did say that they would always they are still have a very strong stance that they want to reunite Taiwan. And they did also say that they never promised to renounce the use of force. Okay, of course they want to do it via peaceful reunification, which is their priority. But they have also added that if force is required, they will not hesitate to do it. Okay, so those are strong words, and we really don't know in the next 5 years. No one is going to restrain Xi. What's going to happen? Okay, we really don't know yet. Okay, so there is also another key uncertainty over here. And so, with so many bad news, what should investors do if you have invested in China, right? Those who have not invested in China, not an issue. Those who have always hated China, they'll be gloating right now. Wow, China is in trouble, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but let's focus on those who have China stock holdings and what should you be doing. To help you, I group these investors, okay, this Chinese stock investor into 3 groups. So you can see which group do you belong to, and I'll give you my views what should each group do. So group number 1 are those who lack confidence in China's future, especially during this period where a lot of all these developments, you have a really overpowering C faction in a government and all the policy that's been rolling out which are very unpopular, right? So if you have felt that this development or this direction where China is going is no longer what you sign up for, okay, where your confidence in a better China future has diminished dramatically, right? Maybe it's better that you sell your position, right? Because if you have no confidence in holding the stocks, it's not just not good for your wallet, but it's also not good for your mental health. Okay, you'll be like every day cursing and swearing. Why is China doing this? Why is China doing that? I don't understand this, right? Why put yourself through this kind of trouble? You're not short of investment ideas, right? There's so many things you can invest in, okay? You not necessarily need to invest in China, especially if your belief in China has wavered or your belief in China has diminished, right? Sell and move on, relieve the burden. Health is more important, okay? Then we talk about group number 2. These are those investors, or we can say traders, right, who are more short-term focused, waiting for a rebound to come. And maybe you have bought in because you felt that China stocks are very cheap and you wanted to sell when the rebound comes, make a tidy profit out of it. You don't really care about the long-term prospect of China, right? You just want to make a short or to mid-term kind of profits, right, because it's so beaten down. But the problem is, after you buy, for the past 1.5 years or 2 years, in fact, it is very highly likely that you are still ending with a loss. Okay, and while hoping for a quick rebound that didn't come, and it just get lower and lower and lower, right, it becomes harder and harder for you to get out. Okay, so you might be still harboring, or maybe the rebound is around the corner. I would say that go do away with that kind of perception, right? It has not been doing you well for the last 2 years. So what makes it different, right, in the next 6 months or a year or even the next 3 months? Okay, we really don't know, right, whether the low will go lower. Okay, so if you really realize that, okay, this is a mistake, right, the rebound just didn't come, just sell and move on. Okay, same thing again, don't risk your health for wealth, right? So it's not worth it at the end of the day. So you can see for the first 2 group, I would say that you can just move along. Okay, just move on. Okay, so is there a group that I will advocate that you continue to hold on to your stocks? I would say yes, and that's group number 3. Right? If you are a long-term China optimist, if you still believe in a brighter China future, if you still believe that China will last longer than C, right? C eventually will be out of office. Okay, and if that's the case, if you believe that China has a much brighter long-term future, and we are talking about years if not decades, right, as a long-term China optimist, you are supposedly holding these stocks, okay, despite the all these issues that's going on, right? Because even as a China develop itself, as a country develop itself, it will meet a lot of problems, okay, teething problems, and some more the systems are different, and you have US coming in to pressure them. They have both internal and external issues to handle, right? So it is not easy, okay, and there will always be troubles along the way, right? Even before US became the superpower of the world, they also had a lot of troubles, right? But they managed to work through it and became a great country. Okay, so if you're a long-term China optimist, give them enough time, right? Really long time to sort out issues, and meanwhile, the companies should be growing as long as you pick the right ones, okay? And to quote you, Charlie Munger, who is one of the long-term China optimists, definitely, right? He's probably the most significant symbol of that. And he was asked during the Daily Journal Corporation's AGM that was happening in June this year, and there were quite a lot of questions around China, right? So of course, Munger, being a China bull, answered, right? And this is just one of the many answers that he gave. He said that we invested some money in China because we could get more value in terms of the strength of the enterprise or the price of the security than we could get in the United States. So basically, he's saying that China equities are more attractive in terms of price versus value. Okay, so that is a very bottom-up approach. Okay, and then he said that if he was referring to another investor, right? He said if he's nervous, he doesn't have to join us. Different folks have different opinions, right? Which is very true. The issue with investing today is that it's not a lack of investment options. It's just so many investment options that allow people to express their own beliefs and value system into the market, into their own investment, right? Some people may believe in crypto, some people don't. Some people believe in China, some people don't. Some people believe in US tech stocks, some people don't. And some people believe in Singapore dividend stocks, some people don't. And I think it's all fine, right? As long as you have an opinion and you're willing to invest based on that opinion, I think that's fine, right? Nobody can really come in and tell you that you're wrong. Okay, everybody is entitled to his opinion, and everybody has that power or that authority to invest their own money. Don't let other people decide for you, right? So if you decide this is the way to go ahead, right? So it's not about blindly sticking to your belief. Okay, beliefs can change, values also can change, and if they change your investment. I think it's as simple as that. All right, so in summary, I think that China does have a lot of potential, but so far the markets have been very punishing, and has been plagued with a lot of issues. As I said, as a country grow, become more prominent, there will be a lot of attention on them, and their problems become a lot more glaring, right? Because the news start to report about them, and that has spooked investors. Because I will also add that the news media are dominated by the West, and even the institution funds are dominated by West. And when there's bad news in China, they can pull out of China in terms of the fund flows, and that hurt the financial markets a lot. So you will realize that the Chinese stock market are very volatile, right? I suspect it's strongly because of these fund flows, right? Very huge fund flows whenever the foreign funds move in and out of China. Okay, and I go through the different scenario, right, depending on what kind of investor you are with relations to your China stock holdings. And I believe that you should only invest in China if you are a long-term China optimist. If you are not, I think it is better to avoid China investment altogether. Okay, so there are many things to invest. Don't need to die invest in China and grumble about it because it's not doing well. Okay, so please, right? So I hope you enjoy this video. Please give me a thumbs up if you find it, you have learned something, right? And if beneficial to you in one way or another. And remember to subscribe to this channel as well.